which is that fundamentally they don't actually fight terrorism. They go to war with terrorism, not understanding that warring against an insurgency group is the single least efficient way to actually get rid of an insurgency group. But secondly, on economy, they mentioned that the CFA franc is an excellent currency because it is so stable. Here's the thing. There is a problem with stability of a currency, and that is that its growth, its ability to grow rapidly is highly limited. So sure, during small moments of economic downturn, the CFA franc might have an advantage over other currencies, but the fact of the matter is the long term of history is not one of economic problem, it's one of economic growth. And this is especially true because the euro is stagnant, and the CFA franc can only really grow in relation to the euro because it is pegged to the euro. I believe the exchange rate is about 300 francs per euro. It is always going to be 300 francs per euro. This is law. And so the fact that this is law means that what they're saying about Macron giving them the right to have economic freedom and devalue their currency is completely nonsensical. I don't even know where this came from. Potentially it's France giving Senegal permission to print the CFA franc, but again, that does nothing to address the exchange rate, and therefore does nothing to address the fact that growth is limited on their side of the house. But more than that, the fact is that when they talk about international aid, they talk about how the majority of Mali's budget comes from international aid from France. A few problems with this. First of all, most of France's wealth, most of Mali's wealth is going to France. Mali has massive gold reserves, but the unequal treaties that we've mentioned in our first speech force Mali to sell those to France for substantially undervalue and allow France to do the mining, meaning that they don't have the economic benefit. Were Mali able to actually control its own gold reserves, Niger to control its own uranium reserves, Morocco to control its own phosphate reserves, we would actually see the complete opposite. No need to depend on France for international aid because the economy itself is strengthening itself. This leads to our third argument, and that is that by extending significant military and economic resources in West Africa, France harms itself. Why is this? Well, France's neo-colonial efforts cost a lot of money in the form of military spending, in the form of intelligence, propping up dictators and influencing elections, putting down protests, and extracting resources. The fact is that France's ROI comes in the form of cheap natural resources and political support. Why is this a problem? It's because over the last 20 years, these calculations have started to shift. The value of things like oil and uranium is to some degree falling, but even if that isn't the case, the US and EU want access to cheap materials the way France has access to them, and so the fact that France gets the cheap materials while the US and EU doesn't strains relations between France and her allies. Additionally, France's mistreatment also harms its bargaining stance when it comes to other poor nations because they see France as a threat, a neo-colonial threat, as opposed to a potential partner. The result here, this is especially true because in so many coups, we see France removed from countries, Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, Chad, Guinea, because this threat has led the populace to remove them. What is the impact? French citizens are dying for economic and political advantage in Africa, but these advantages are no longer as strong as they were 50 years ago. As a result, the harm France causes to its international reputation vastly outweighs any benefit France might experience. By pulling out, France is able to engage with these countries as equals. As such, they can present to the world that they are a capable and reliable partner and avoid the wrath of other countries. This matters because if the US and EU resent France for its access to cheap natural resources, they're likely to bypass France economically in international trade. We've already seen this in the real world with the AUKUS deal, where France was supposed to be selling nuclear subs to Australia, but instead the US and UK swooped in and took over in order to spite France. This is what it comes down to. France is hurting its own image internationally, it's hurting West Africa, and West Africa suffers. Every stakeholder here suffers on their side of the world while benefiting on ours. So proud to propose.